I'm Eddie Muller, welcoming you to another trip through Noir Alley, where we feature the darker side of classic cinema. Today we throw the Prowl Car's spotlight on one of the great American crime films, The Asphalt Jungle, a 1950 offering from an unlikely source, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. At MGM, you were more likely to find Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland stealing kisses, or Gene Kelly and Sid Charisse setting off alarms with a red-hot dance number. Hard-bitten hoods and career criminals were not the studio's stock in trade. But when John Huston wanted to make a film of writer W.R. Burnett's recently published novel, the studio's production chief, Dory Sherry, gave the picture an enthusiastic green light, over the objections of his boss, Louis B. Mayer. Huston began his career as a screenwriter, and no one in the business had a keener understanding or more respect for great works of literary fiction. Among the exceptional authors he adapted to film, Dashiell Hammett, B. Traven, Maxwell Anderson, Stephen Crane, James Agee, Truman Capote, Ernest Hemingway, Arthur Miller, Tennessee Williams, Rudyard Kipling, Flannery O'Connor, Malcolm Lowry, and James Joyce. Not to mention his taking a crack in 1956 at the great American novel, Herman Melville's Moby Dick. Well, maybe William Riley Burnett doesn't belong in that exalted class, but it's not for lack of trying. From the 1929 publication of his first novel, Little Caesar, Burnett had an astounding track record of best-selling books that were almost immediately turned into hit movies. Already this year, we've seen two Burnett tales on Noir Alley, High Sierra and Nobody Lives Forever. A lifelong Francophile, Burnett's ambition was to write books that explored the history of America, as his literary hero, Honoré de Balzac, did in France. And as soon as Huston had read the galleys of Burnett's 1949 novel, The Asphalt Jungle, he snapped up the movie rights, knowing it'd make a terrific picture. He'd previously adapted Burnett's High Sierra, also about a group of crooks plotting a high-stakes heist. In fact, Burnett's specialty was stories about small groups of men thrown together in a treacherous mission, regardless of whether it was a war, western, or crime story. Huston wrote the shooting script for this film with Ben Maddow, trimming the parts focused on the police and keeping the action centered on the crooked characters dwelling in the underworld of an unnamed Midwestern city. Like many artists in Hollywood, Huston was influenced by neo-realist films that were emerging from post-war Europe, particularly Vittorio De Sica's Bicycle Thieves and Roberto Rossellini's Open City and Paisan. His direction combined the gritty naturalist style of those movies with visual flourishes familiar to Hollywood crime thrillers of the 40s, creating a movie that simultaneously celebrated the tropes of crime fiction while giving its bent characters a lived-in humanity rare for the time. Veteran cameraman Harold Rawson, who'd been shooting pictures since the silent era, including the stunning Docks of New York for director Joseph von Sternberg, handled both the neo-realist daylight scenes and the stylized nocturnal passages with equal aplomb. He'd get an Oscar nomination for his efforts. What really elevates The Asphalt Jungle to the upper echelon of motion pictures, not just crime movies, are the performers. The actors are indelible, top to bottom, with every role perfectly cast and performed. Sterling Hayden and Gene Hagen were the headline stars, but The Asphalt Jungle is a true ensemble piece, a rarity in Hollywood at that time, and especially in film noir, which tended to focus on the exploits of a lone, desperate character. The supporting actors, especially Sam Jaffe and Louis Calhern, make the most of the script's brilliant dialogue, which includes some of the most quotable lines in the genre, most pulled straight from Burnett's novel. Jaffe was nominated for an Oscar, and Calhern should have been. The film is also famous, of course, for providing a provocative breakout role for young Marilyn Monroe. According to Huston, she tested for it by playing a scene as Angela Finley opposite him in the part of Uncle Lon. They rehearsed on his office couch. But Huston said he wasn't convinced until he dismissed Monroe and watched her sashay out of his office. He later noted that Marilyn was one of the few actresses who could make an entrance by leaving the room. Now, Marilyn is only one of the featured ingredients in this perfectly blended cinematic cocktail. Great work is also turned in by James Whitmore, Anthony Caruso, Mark Lawrence, Brad Dexter, and Barry Kelly. MGM studio chief Louis B. Mayer expressed disdain for the finished product, saying, "It's trash. I wouldn't cross the street to see a picture like that." Well, LB, one man's trash is another man's masterpiece. Released on this day, 69 years ago, June 1st, 1950, Noir Alley today presents the great American heist picture, The Asphalt Jungle.